Hello everyone, welcome to AstrologyNewsReport.com. Today is March 16th, 2014.
Presenting an alternate view of world events as seen through the lens of Vedic astrology.
I'm Ron Berger.
And I'm David Anton Savage. Let's take a look at the week that was.
In world events, the Mars Retrograde Rahu conjunction continued to take center stage last week. The tense Russia versus the Western powers standoff over Ukraine and Crimea continued, looking more and more like a game of chicken as the rhetoric escalated in response to the Russians moving in more military forces. Will Putin back down? Will the U.S. and EU have to back down?
In a flashback to Cold War military escalation and deterrence, NATO is actively building up its air defense forces in Poland and the Baltic states, and even launching AWACS planes over Poland and Romania to monitor the Ukraine crisis to enhance the alliance's situational awareness.
Meanwhile, the United States and the EU contemplate sanctions against Russia. Most recently, Angela Merkel, Chancellor of Germany, has announced in no uncertain terms that if Russia takes Crimea, there will be hell to pay.
Well, what she did say is that it will cost Russia economically and politically. Already, the value of Russia's ruble has been steadily falling all week.
Here we go. Angela versus Vladimir. Stay tuned.
One tough cookie versus another.
All right, another example of Mars retrograde and Rahu. Mars is the planet of actions, and when it is retrograde, the actions tend to get screwed up somehow. Rahu is an eclipse point and therefore obscure things, creating confusion. Rahu also signifies something unusual.
Yes, the mystery of the disappearance of Malaysian Airlines Flight 370 continues to bedevil investigators. All signs indicate either an unusual, potentially violent occurrence, or, according to the most recent information, that the pilots or someone else deliberately turned off all communication devices that report to ground control and then flew the plane way off course to where we don't have any real answers as of today, Sunday, March 16th.
As each day passed, experts and pundits laid out their analysis and theories. Meanwhile, the search efforts expanded to a wider area of the ocean amid intensifying confusion and contradictory statements, with the country's civil aviation authorities and the military both saying the plane may have turned back from its last known position between Malaysia and Vietnam. And then the U.S. chiming in with satellite data suggesting the plane kept flying for another 5 hours.
Or possibly 7.
Yeah.
So, Ron, let me get this straight. The plane actually headed out of the Indian Ocean or beyond to Central Asia?
Yes, David. Now they are saying it could have gone as far as Kazakhstan. Back in February, we talked about the combined energy of Mars retrograde conjunct Rahu as being a strong indicator of accidents or unusual occurrences, even destruction. This Malaysian airliner event very much fits the bill.
The search for Malaysian Airlines Flight 370 was declared a criminal investigation on Saturday when the country's prime minister admitted that the plane had been deliberately diverted from its planned course and flew as much as 7 hours into an unknown location.
Yeah, well, something strange is definitely going on here. Either it's a hijacking, or did the pilots do it for reasons of their own?
Here's another astrological angle on all this. This past week, Mercury, the planet of data and information, has been getting closer to Neptune, the planet of mystery. Doesn't sound like this mystery is getting solved anytime soon.
Indeed. All right, another manifestation of the Mars retrograde Rahu combination, this time in the USA chart's 11th house. A long-simmering dispute between some senators and the CIA burst into public view last Tuesday when the head of the Senate Intelligence Committee accused the spy agency of improperly searching a congressional computer database.
Things were getting pretty steamed up with direct accusations by Committee Chair Dianne Feinstein, claiming that the CIA had violated the Constitution by its surveillance of the committee's own computers. CIA head John Brennan has denied any culpability.
Pundits are calling it a defining moment that will determine whether Congress can fulfill its duty to watch over the nation's spy agencies.
May I point out that Rahu is a significator of spies as well as technology, and what, pray tell, prompted them to spy on their Senate overseers?
Well, 'twas the torture issue. Remember back when Obama became president and the Department of Justice opened an investigation into the CIA's torturing of 9/11 suspects? The Senate committee opened its own investigation as well.
Yes, the spook agency wanted to know just how much the Senate had on them, so they spooked on the senators. Wow, there has not been this much fun with senators since the Roman Empire.
All right, and in another case of a long-simmering Rahu retrograde pressure cooker exploding, in Turkey, a 15-year-old boy who had been in a coma for 9 months, ever since he had been hit by a tear gas canister fired by the police, well, he died of his injuries. And this has aggravated an already bad situation in Turkey, causing an intensification of protests against Prime Minister Erdogan's government in the run-up to this month's municipal elections.
Tens of thousands of mourners filled the streets of Istanbul, using the death of the teen as a rallying point to express their displeasure with Erdogan's authoritarian policies and corrupt practices, reinforcing calls for him to resign and putting him at risk in the March 30th elections.
Okay. And there were even more manifestations of Mars plus Rahu. Mars is a fiery planet, and Rahu represents accidents, especially unusual ones. So this is a combustible combination, which manifested as dramatic events on both sides of the USA last week.
On the West Coast, a 6-alarm fire in San Francisco where a whole block of not quite finished condos went up in smoke, stretching the San Francisco Fire Department to the limit. And then on the East Coast, a leaking gas pipe under a building exploded, and the resultant fire leveled a couple of apartment buildings in New York City.
And let's not forget to add in that Saturn retrograde was there in the mix. Saturn is structure, and all those buildings had a really bad day.
And so we conclude this week's review of the week. Be sure to click in with us next week.